Good evening and welcome to Adobo Talks, a series of insightful and educational sessions where we take a closer look at how creativity inspires and unleashes inventive solutions. Here, we look at creativity that not only delights and astounds, but more importantly, drives innovation and growth. I'm Kayla Ruth Mirano, and I'll be your host for tonight's episode of Usapang Design. Thank you everyone for tuning in. In case some of you are new here, Usapang Design is a series of insightful and inspiring sessions on visual communications organized by the Communication Design Association of the Philippines. For tonight's talk, we'll get to know what a Filipino typeface is and its role in reflecting our country's identity by looking at different approaches to creating type and who makes them. Yes, tonight we are very excited to welcome our guest speaker, Jo Malinis. Jo is a graphic designer from the Philippines. Apart from working on brand identities, she's also fascinated by letter forms and how they can be representative of concepts and themes that inspire her on a personal and professional level at work. Joe founded Type63, an initiative that aims to serve as a platform to celebrate and showcase type design and typography by Filipinos. She's also an instructor at the University of the Philippines Diliman College of Fine Arts, where she teaches visual communication design. So let's not keep any of you waiting any further. I know everyone is really excited to hear about her insights. Let's kick off this fifth episode for Usapang Design Gathering Creatives. Hi, Joe. You can take it away.
Hi everyone. I really hope you're seeing my screen because now that it's on full screen, I can't really see anyone else. But yeah, hello, magandang gabi po. Good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. And thank you to Adobo and CDAP for inviting me today to be a part of the Usapang Design series. I'm very honored to be part of this, and I'm very excited to share what I have with everyone. And just a quick disclaimer, not to excuse myself or anything, but I would just like to say that I am recovering from a fever and some colds. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to be COVID, but yes, it has affected my preparation for this presentation. So I really hope that I still do this justice and I don't bore anyone with my groggy voice. But yeah, to introduce myself, my name is Jo Malinis. I am a graphic designer, type designer, and educator from Quezon City. I am also the founder of Type63, which is an initiative that aims to showcase and celebrate Filipino type design, ranging from custom type for projects to fully realized typefaces and typographic layouts. I am also um, a I also used to be a part of a design studio. So my interest in type has been present in my life for a long time now. It started when I was working as a graphic designer in Plus 63 Design Co., where I was encouraged to explore type design through different applications in developing brand identities. I was able to work on a bunch of brand identity projects that required custom typefaces as part of their brand system. And even if I've left the company after 9 years of being there, I took that interest with me, and now it has evolved into something that I consider as my passion. Charas. And while I have already developed a few typefaces of my own, I'm still taking the time to improve my skills and to learn more about the field. And this is actually what drove me to create this presentation today in this format because I wanted to try and answer questions like how does a Filipino typeface look like, or what is the Filipino typeface? But before we jump into that, bago tayo mag-existential crisis dito tungkol sa Philippine identity and what that is applied in design, let's figure out what the typeface is first. So type design is just one of the many fields within the broader category of type design. And type is defined, broader category of graphic design. And type is defined as a style or appearance of letters, characters, or text. So the words that appear on your screen right now are an example of type. So how is it different from lettering and calligraphy? Calligraphy is an art form that focuses on the beautiful writing of letters. So anything, um, any um, any pen, any pencil, or anything that you touch with your hands when you get it in contact with paper or a board or kahoy or cement or whatever, and you start writing letters, that is considered as calligraphy. Lettering naman is also an art form, but instead it focuses on drawing or illustrating letters. So once you start tweaking the letter forms, that starts to become lettering. So mas parang drawing yung approach nyo to a letter form, it is considered as lettering. Typography naman is also an art form, but in this case, it arranges letters or typefaces in a clear, readable, and visually appealing manner. It mostly deals with letters that are meant to be repeated over and over. That's why usually typefaces, you'll only see them in a digital format because these are letters that are meant to be used again and again and again. And lastly, just to clarify, a typeface naman is a complete set of characters unified by a common design. Like, let's say, the design of Arial or Times New Roman, or in this case, the one on your screen, is HK Grotesque. But another term that is used usually to refer to this is a font. But a font only refers to a very specific style that is part of that typeface. So for example, Arial Bold or Times New Roman Italic. And with our example in front of us, pwedeng HK Grotesque Thin or yung regular or yung semi-bold. So just one single weight in this family is considered a font. So think of it as a typeface being a TV series while the font is just one episode of that show. So how is type made? The details vary per designer, but in general, the process has three main parts: conceptualization, construction, and then presentation. Conceptualization is where you start with an idea and figure out how to execute it in the form of a typeface. Dito ka na mag-sketch, dito ka gagawa ng mood board, mag-research, etc., etc. And once you have a pretty solid grasp of what you want to do, you then jump to construction, where you properly draw your typefaces on a type design software like Glyphs, RoboFont, FontLab, or even on a vector software like Adobe Illustrator, which you can then convert into a typeface using a plugin called FontSelf. Once you've created a character, you have to make sure that it harmonizes with all of the other letters, numbers, and symbols that you plan to create. So in the construction phase, you have to make sure that you're not just drawing individual letters, but you're also making sure that they work as part of one whole type system in order for you to make a cohesive typeface. So after the drawing phase, that's when you have to figure out spacing and then kerning, and then you have to proof it, and then revise hanggang sa maging masaya ka, and then you jump to the presentation phase. And this phase is when you're finally ready to release your typeface to the world. So you create a type specimen that shows the range of that particular typeface in use. Para alam ng mga tao kung ano ba yung itsura and features nung typeface na bibilin or ida-download nila. And another category after that is marketing. If you do decide to sell your typeface after you create it. This is where licensing comes in. This is where choosing the right marketplace or foundry is important to learn about. And this is where you make sure that your typeface is visible to the general public, etc., and so on and so forth. So it's a very complicated process, and there's a lot of smaller steps involved. In every main part of this type making process. But for this presentation, I'd like to focus on just the first one, which is conceptualization, specifically looking at it as an answer to the earlier questions of how does a Filipino typeface look? Is there a singular typeface that we can call the Filipino typeface? So to answer those, we have to look at the different approaches that our type designers have taken to come up with their typefaces. And as someone who has been collecting Filipino-made typefaces at Type63, I noticed a couple of similarities in terms of how designers approach their Filipino-themed concepts. One is by referencing existing lettering and or calligraphic work. So some designers look around their surroundings and observe the different letters, numbers, and symbols that they encounter and create type based on those existing letter forms. So how does this look like? For example, yung mga tubero signages na nakikita natin plastered all over the country, especially in the metro, halos kada poste na makita natin, merong A4 doon or letter size paper na may naka-advertise na profession. So, madalas tubero, electrician, ayan, etc., etc. And may kita natin yung mga numbers nila sa baba. So, itong mga posters na to ang ginamit na reference ng isang design studio na tinatawag na Together We Design. So, they use this as inspiration for their typeface called Vowel Signs, which averages the look of the DIY signages and reminders that we see every day in the streets. Not only did Together We Design reference the way that the letters in those signages were written, but they also created a variable font to mimic the system of how those letters occupy space. So if you'll notice, kahit gaano kaliit yung space, design space, or kahit gaano yan kalawak, kaya siyang punuin ng vowel signs. While vowel signs references silkscreen and stenciled street signs, this next example looks at hand-painted signages done using either paint or a marker that are present in the palengke or kaya naman yung mga signages na nakikita natin na nakapinta sa likod ng mga tricycle. It's LL Caratula by Lloyd Cat, and it's inspired by the hand-painted outdoor signages in the Philippines more commonly seen during the 90s and early 2000s. Sabi nga ni Lloyd, ngunit dahil sa makabagong teknolohiya ng printing, mas nagiging bihira na ang paggamit ng estilong ito. Which in my personal experience is very true. Because in creating this presentation, I actually had a hard time looking for non-printed signages to use as an example for this specific typeface. And it's not to say that that's a bad thing or a good thing, but it's an observation na hindi na masyado tayo nakakita ng mga signages na hina-handpaint pa. Or at least yung mga available sa atin online. And of course, as my last example for this category, how can we not mention how jeepney signages, both the ones in front and on the sides, have been constantly referenced in a lot of Philippine design in general. And in type, most people, if not all, in the field know that Aaron Amar created Cubao Free and Quiapo Free to make these signages accessible to digital users. Cubao Free and Quiapo Free have been used by a lot of different people, even the jeepney drivers themselves. Another approach to conceptualization is by taking visual cues from our culture. One of my favorite examples of this is Inandan, a typeface by Uncurated Studio, which is a geometric display typeface based on beadwork and weaving patterns from different ethnic groups situated in Mindanao. Uncurated Studio says, each character follows a grid system consisting of a row of 10 rectangles stacked alternately in 13 columns. The alternate sequence is based on the observation that a thread must hold a bead alternately to be able to create a tightly knit accessory or garment with multiple lines of beadwork. And this was very clearly reflected in how the structure of the letters were done. The next example is my very own terno, which is based on one of our traditional dresses, the terno. The curves on the letter T are based on the definitive feature of every terno, which is the clipped butterfly sleeves. From this, I developed all of the other characters, trying my best to capture the essence of the garment. You will see how distinct shapes are transformed into recognizable characters, much like this one in Taclobo by John David Maza, which is a heavy display typeface resembling the proportions and curves of the world's largest living bivalve mollusks, the giant clams locally known as Taclobo. If you'll notice, yung letter O niya is so cute. It has an alternate that is a little bit different from what we usually see as the letter O. And this one is very clearly based on the shape of the Tacloba. And all of the others letter follow this design um, element. Another one is Dulungan, also by John David Maza, that takes its cue from the Visayan wrinkled hornbill, locally called the Dulungan, which is a critically endangered species of hornbill living in the rainforests of Negros and Panay. You'll notice that the shape of the Dulungan's beak is applied to the serifs of this typeface. So this is a serif typeface that has um, asymmetrical serifs, meaning hindi magkamuka yung dalawang serifs dun sa isang letter. And this was because it was referenced from the shape of the Dulungan's beak, which I think is a genius idea. Lastly, we'll see how John Misael uses the shapes of bamboo to construct his letter forms in his display typeface, Balay. Notice how the letter stems flare outward from the middle, similar to how bamboos aren't stick-straight objects and exhibit subtle curves in their designs. The next approach to conceptualization is something that I enjoy studying a lot, which is when we create typefaces by representing non-tangible ideas. In Bisdak by Diana, she writes that this typeface is primarily inspired by Cebu City and the strong delivery of the Cebuano language. The typeface is in honor of everyone who grew up as a Bisaya in different parts of the country. And while I'm not Cebuano, nor do I understand Bisaya, based on Diana's description and on her design, I can clearly see the strength that she is trying to depict in this typeface. Completely opposite naman to how Suba by Les Torts looks. Suba means river or the mouth of the river in the Zamboanga Peninsula. Suba is a display typeface that seeks to mimic the movement of the waters, which Les tried to capture in the way the letters are formed. Les discovered that she has Subanon or Subanan roots, and this was her way of paying homage to it. Kundiman naman, by Sirius Studio, used the kundiman, or the traditional means of serenading, as their main source of inspiration in creating their typeface. In their website, they write, our custom display typeface is characterized by romantic swashes, ornamentality, and graceful intricacies. And last, to close this section, is my own typeface, Your, which started because of a joke that I would hear from a lot of my friends. Sabi nila, nung lumalaki daw sila, pag nag-aaway daw sila magkakapatid, sasabihin daw ng nanay nila, ayan, kutsilyo, magsaksakan na lang kayo. Which is obviously a joke, but something very distinct to our culture. I haven't met anyone else outside of the Philippines who knows about this joke. And I think it's a very, very unique thing to us. And I thought, hey, why not use it as a reference to create a typeface based on that silly joke. Guys, may sakit pa rin ako. I'm so sorry. And that's where the idea for this sharp text typeface started, which has evolved into what it is now. Last observation in terms of approach to conceptualization is by reviving or preserving writing systems. And in my case, I've so far only seen ones for Baybayin, like Baybayin Deco by Lloydie Cat, Corporal or Malibata Redux Baybayin by Aaron Amar, and Baybayin Cyber by Lucius Filimos. And this isn't to say that these are the only Baybayin typefaces that exist or that I've come across. That's definitely not the case. But what I have observed is that Baybayin is the only Philippine writing system that has active designers pursuing it. Now, if we go back to our questions from earlier, how does a Filipino typeface look like, or what is the Filipino typeface? Based on what we've seen so far, Is there a clear typeface that we can pinpoint to as the Filipino typeface? Is it Bisdak or Inandan? Which one is better? Is it any of the Baybayin typefaces? Is Baybayin the superior writing system? How about others like Kulitan, Hanono, Buwid, Jawi, and all of the others that we might not know of yet or have forgotten? Does my typeface matter less just because the seed of the idea that it started from was something that we treat as a joke? Is it any less culturally connected to what it means to be a Filipino versus all of the others that we deem as maybe more important? How can we answer these? Ito yung matagal ko ng tanong sa sarili ko because in other talks, I would get this answer a lot. What makes a Filipino typeface? Is there one typeface that represents the Filipino culture? And it's been a difficult question to try and answer. But I've personally found peace after listening to Adrian Panadero share his take on Filipino identity in design during one of our talks at Type63. Adrian said, type serves to visualize culture. It serves to visualize meaning. He continues, a singular look or a singular identity is constructed. It's formed. It's not as organic. Because in that process, you're reading out kung sino yung kasama at kung sino yung hindi kasama. And I agree with this. I think it's very powerful and I think it's very true. Looking at these typefaces in terms of context and cultural significance, one shouldn't be any less than the other. And one cannot solely represent a culture that is as rich as ours. Imagine we have how many islands? 7,107 ba? Dumadagdag pa ata yan pagka high tide, low tide. And choosing just one typeface to encompass all of these islands with so many different cultures and specificities per region does it a disservice. There should not be just one, but there should be all. And to think na itong mga pinresent ko today are just only at the very tip of the iceberg. If you go to Type63's type directory, you will see that there are so many typefaces made by Filipinos. And a lot of those typefaces were inspired by Philippine culture, referencing different facets in different ways, kind of like colorful voices, each different on their own, but each valuable nonetheless. And these are the complete ones pa lang, ha? Wala pa dito yung mga works in progress or yung mga lettering pieces at pinag-iisipan pa lang kompletuhin as a typeface or yung mga typefaces na hindi pa lang talaga nasasubmit sa directory na to. It's a directory that grows week by week, and it's something that really shows the differences that we all have as Filipinos, expressed as typefaces. My role as someone who manages an account that caters to the type community is to try and discover more people outside of my own circle and encourage them to show their work to others for them to enjoy and learn from. Our role as people in this community is not to discourage other people from joining, but to listen to what they have to say and see what they have to offer. Type63 should never discriminate based on location, gender, skill level, or type of commitment to the craft. There's always space for everyone, and everyone can contribute to the evolving idea of what Filipino type is and where it's headed. Thank you. Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much for that insightful presentation, Joe. And I really admire what you said about our culture, our identity as Filipinos being rich and different, and it can't be represented by just one singular typeface. So, as we say in Bacolod, in Negros Occidental, madamo gid nga salamat for highlighting that in your talk. So, to our viewers here tonight, we hope that you have some questions ready as we move on to our live Q&A portion. Today, Dustin Carbonera, graphic designer and founder of I Saw Design PH, will join us today. So, hi, Dustin.
Hello. Hi.
Yes, I'm sure that
Hi.
our viewers tonight are excited to have their questions answered by the both of you, by Joe. So, in this part of our talk, our guests will tackle some key learnings from today's session, as well as questions and insights in our comments section today. So, if you have any questions or if you want to clarify anything at all, we value your input and we believe it's important to spark conversations like these. So, make sure to really utilize the comment section whether you're watching live from Facebook or YouTube, and we'll try to get to those as many as we can tonight. So, Dustin, ikaw na yung bahala. Take it away.
All right. Thank you. Uh, so thank you for joining Usapang Design episode 6 na, diba? So Joe, first question. And this is, I hope
Fantastic.
you don't mind na this is some sort of a personal question. Pero kasi
Mhm.
of course, I've seen your career from way back. So to be honest, I'm a fanboy ever since. Now, tapos biglang I saw you shift from branding into type. So I saw that shift as well. But my question is, what was your turning point na parang to shift your mastery of the craft of design from branding into type? Kasi kunyari, there's this story by Michael Beirut of Pentagram. So yung story naman niya, when he was still young, he saw a logo that changed everything na parang, shucks, with a simple, yung L, ginanon yung L, tapos nandun sa taas yung IFT, parang doon naglaro yung isip niya, shucks, that single logo can say a lot. So, ikaw, what's your story ba?
Ah, hirap sagutin Medyo baka bukas tayo matapos sa
Oh, no.
kwentuhan. Hindi. I'll try to, I really haven't thought about it in a way na I can answer it quickly. But I guess for me, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like your example na ay may nakita ako and then one day I woke up and I love type na. Hindi siya ganon. It was a very slow process that really needed um, a lot of pushing from not only my mentors, yan sina Dan Matatina from Plus 63, sina Burns Humor, but also from my friends who were seeing my interest in type slowly grow from just something na pinaglalaroan ko sa Illustrator to something that I really wanted to pursue as a full-time thing. And yun, I think yung pinaka-recognizable na moment for me, or at least it's one of the milestones for me, was when I was assigned to work on the custom typeface for Kushikatsu Daruma. And at that
Mm.
time, wala pa masyado nagtatype sa Philippines. May mga nagtatype sa Pilipinas, hindi ko lang sila kilala. Ang kilala ko lang nung time na yon si Mike Parker when he was still a
Wow.
partner at End the Half, and he would also make custom typefaces. And so when I started creating that typeface for Kushikatsu Daruma, I had so many questions for myself, and I had to ask them and answer them by myself. So that started the research phase, and that's how I think dun talaga yung pinaka-turning point, I guess, in committing to this type design thing. Ayun.
Oh. I also know that that branding parang very colorful ata to, no? Ito yung very colorful
Mm-mm.
and
Yes.
very playful yung design niya. So very happy to hear your parang origin story, if we could say that, no? So
Mm-mm.
let's tackle more questions. So for one, from Sam, what is your go-to font? Yung lagi mong ginagamit pag wala ka nang maiisip pag nagde-design ka. Because for him, it's Gotham.
Gets yung Gotham, gets yung Helvetica, gets ko lahat yan. For me, I guess it would be National by Clim Type Foundry.
Oh.
And for serif, I guess it would also be from Clim Type Foundry, yung Uzald, which I use for my personal branding na dapat palitan ko na kasi gumagawa na ako ng typeface.
Oh.
Um, yeah, and for Google Docs, my all-time favorite is Carla, which I think represents my voice well. Yun.
For sure. For sure, ang dami tutuloy magche-check ng mga types that you just mentioned. Gagayahin na nila so that they could also be the type queen. So, Another question that I have is this. So, from all that you've shown, ang ganda ng presentation and a lot of them I already know. Now, seeing all of those types, parang most of them are display typefaces. So, parang konti lang yung you would say na workhorse. And personally, I'm a fan of workhorse. My favorite would be HK Grotesque.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
now, um, my question is, does this kind of parang display types say a bit of something about our Filipino culture? Meron bang correlation that you're seeing?
Yes, definitely. I think, well, okay. I think it's one because wala rin naman tayo masyadong type education in the country, and to create a text
Oh,
typeface, you really have to double down on research and blood, sweat, and tears talaga sa pagbuo niyan kasi walang kamatayang revisions yan. But yes, I agree with what you said na it's also, I think, a reflection of our culture na mahilig tayo sa display typefaces because we're very expressive people. We're
yeah.
very loud, we're very vocal, we're very opinionated. And I feel like display typefaces are good typefaces to show that side of Filipino culture. And that's why it's one of the things na na-enjoy gawin ng mga type designers natin dito. Kasi ang dami mong pwedeng sabihin in just one typeface.
Yeah.
So, not to say na hindi natin kaya mag-text. I just think it's, I mean, ako naman, I've ever since I've been on team display. So,
Oh,
not to say that text is bad or text is harder to do, but I just think it's a little bit more fun to do display type.
I know what you mean by display. And speaking of display, kamusta ba yung terno?
I'm sorry.
Kamusta na yung terno?
Materno! Kunyari, hindi ko narinig. Charot. Ayun, nasa basement pa rin siya.
Because it's
sabi ko,
pretty,
sabi ko
yeah, it's very
gagawin ko siya,
pretty.
pero wala nangyari.
Kasi ako, inaabangan ko siya. I thought I missed the launch of Terno, but I
No.
would say na, no, for sure I wouldn't miss it. So I'm really looking forward for it to be, to be out in the market because it's really nice. The accent is
Thank
so
you.
nice. Hopefully, hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully, may iba pa kasi akong tinatapos. So, medyo tago muna
Oh,
si Terno. Oo.
okay. All right. And aside from that, there are so many questions for you. So isa-isayin natin sila as long as we have
Sure.
time. So from Nina Venus, I hope I said it correctly. Typography is often overlooked by clients. But how do you convince them to go out from the I think bigyan na naman to sa branding. So how do you convince them to go out from the Joker or Comic Sans choice? So ikaw, how do you use your powers?
Well, I think when we're talking about brand identities, tama, diba? It was in the
Yes,
context
yes.
of branding. Okay.
I would say
If we're
yes.
talking about brand identities, you are crafting something that is trying to bring its voice out into the world. And what better way to do that than by choosing the right typeface? And so, what a good exercise to do, siguro, when presenting to clients, is to try to set your work in different typefaces, kahit gaano pa ka-extreme yan, and show them how the selection of a typeface changes the tone of how they read the typeface. Sometimes kasi as designers, naka-ingrain na sa atin yung type as something that is important. And we forget that it's not the case for non-designers. Hindi naman nila alam na
Mm.
importante yung font kasi nakikita naman nila. Type is invisible to a lot of people, even to us. Kasi it should be invisible because you should
Yeah.
focus on the words that it's trying to convey. But it lends a voice, and that's the important thing na kailangan nating parating sa ating mga kliyente. Na ito yung boses na pinaparating ng typeface na to. Kaya kailangan pagpilian talaga natin kung alin yung gagamitin natin.
Hey, I think we just generated a, a new quote from this talk. Kasi I know the term design should be invisible, correct? But you just said that type lends a voice. Shucks, that was very nice. Okay, gawin na natin yung poster. Let's make a poster with the quote. So ito, another question. It's a question from Nala. Do you type designers have to have that sense of perfectionism when creating fonts? Since the design needs to be seamless. And when do you say, so samahan natin ng isa pang question, or when do you say that is actually enough?
Oh, it's a question that I still try to answer myself, yung
Oh,
when it is enough. And one of my mentors told me that it's enough pagka wala ka nang mahanap na kukut-kutin dyan. So, once that you feel like wala ka nang kailangan i-revise, um, then that's enough. Because it's still a subjective thing. But if you want to be very thorough about it, you have to show your work to a lot of different people and to try and ask them if it's readable, if that's your goal, or if your goal is to go crazy. Ask them if it's crazy enough.
oh,
But I think the first part of the question is do you have to have a sense of perfectionism? Yes, to some extent, oo talaga. Because you're working with not just one drawing of a letter. You have to work with, 26 at least at the very base. And then may diacritics pa yan, may numbers pa yan, may symbols pa yan. So you have to the care that you put into drawing one letter, you have to apply to all of the other glyphs. So hindi lang perfectionism yung kailangan, but also patience is very important in this discipline. Wala
oh
ako ng mga
man. Man, I understand what you just said na parang you need to be very technical because you had this project last year, tama ba? The tipong Filipino, and it was very helpful, but at the same time medyo overwhelming then because of the perfectionism that comes with it, because
Yes.
you have to be clear with every, to the point of it. So parang shucks,
Mm-mm.
nakaka-paralyze siya at times. So much like your
Yes.
Terno, I'm not even done with
Right? How many
I
years
know.
na?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So there. So by the way, so there are so many questions. All right. So kaysa sa masabi pa yung mga fonts natin. Here are so many questions. But how do you help move Filipino fonts away from little racist associations so as to not confuse this with misrepresentations? Medyo ano siya,
Ooh,
hard. I know.
I think I have to read lang the first part kasi medyo loaded
Yes.
yung question.
I know.
I think I'm familiar with this. I think I saw an article version of this. Um, so my question is, how do you help move Filipino
Hmm.
fonts away from little racist associations? Hmm. I don't
Hard,
know if
no?
I'll be able to answer this because I haven't really encountered it yet. I feel like in the Philippines kasi we're very influenced by the global north. So maraming design decisions natin na influenced by their own design decisions. And so I'm answering this in the context of type ha. So medyo
Yes.
hahalo-halo na lahat ng yon, and mahirap na minsan i-recognize kung ano ba dun yung influence na nakuha natin from a foreign influence or something that we took from our own culture, whatever that means. And so, hindi as striking, I guess, yung um, difference niya from all of the
Mm.
other typefaces outside of the Philippines. And so, I don't know if I've encountered that. But how do you help move Filipino fonts away from little racist associations so as to not confuse this with misrepresentations? Is yun, I guess, is not to tie the Filipino typeface or the look of the Filipino typeface to just one idea.
Yeah.
Show everyone else na it's capable of so many other things na hindi tayo mababox into a certain aesthetic. I hope I answered that. It's a very tough question.
It is.
Matrix. Chikahan na lang tayo sa
Oh, yes.
Type63, pero mahirap yung tanong mo. Oo.
No, but
I hope
but I understood your answer, and I really parang I agree with what you just said. Now because we have so many, parang kumbaga in the Philippines we have so many flavors. So we have so many things to showcase, and we can see that in your website, Type 63 website. So I think that should answer that question. So ito medyo madali. Medyo madali. I think ano, parang at least they might have missed some parts of your talk. So, what application is good to use to create a font as a beginner? And is there a site where we can also sell fonts? Or, isama natin yung question, will you be starting a site where you are going to sell fonts like a type foundry? Hmm?
Okay, sige. Isa. Applications first. Applications, there are, okay, for beginners, there is, I think, oh no, wala ba si Aaron at si Judge sa chat? Alam nila yun eh. Meron kasing online na font something. I will try to research and send you. If you actually go to the Type63 Instagram, we have under guides, meron dun yung software that you can check out. I forgot the entry points. Merong mga free websites that you can actually build fonts there. But if you want to take it a little further, there's this plugin for Adobe Illustrator called Font. Ano yung tawag sa kanya?
Self.
Font Self. Thank you, Dustin.
On self.
Ayan, Font
Yes.
Self. So you can do your vectors on Adobe Illustrator, and then once you're happy with what you've made, you can put all of those vectors into that program, and then siya yung gagawa ng programming ng typeface for you. And if you are starting to develop a deeper interest and you're finally ready to commit to a software na medyo mas heavyweight, there are three options. Yes,
Mhm.
I think three. One is Glyphs, another is RoboFont. These are both for Mac. And then there's Font Lab, which is available for Windows users. So yun, these are a bit expensive, but these will help you create more detailed, or at least typefaces that you can really adjust to the smallest detail. And ayun. Pero ano na yun, I would really recommend that you try all of the other softwares first bago ka tumalon dun sa mas mabibigat na software, kasi malaking investment siya and it's really not for everyone.
Mhm. Okay.
Ayun, ayan na yung mga type designers. Ayan o, Fontbird, Fontstruck, Fontstruck. Sorry guys. Oo, ayan. Yun yung mga meron online.
Ayan. Ayan na sila,
Thank you.
nagsasagutan na sila.
Thank you to our community.
Ayan,
Ayan,
one struck
Fontforge
down.
also. Mm-mm.
Wow. Ayun, there. So, yung another nakadikit na question dito, will you be making a type foundry in the future?
Well, I don't want to say no kasi that's so
No.
final, but I don't see it in the next 5 years.
No.
The Type63 really is for community building and trying to see who our designers are, discover more designers, and put their work out in the world. It's also trying to build connections within those designers and trying to solidify and strengthen that network. So dun muna ako nakafocus. And
Wow.
then dun naman sa marketing aspect, I'm also trying to enrich and trying to figure that out myself. So in terms of making money, mas dun ako sa personal ko muna nakatuon. But in the future, malay niyo kung makakuha tayo ng magaling funder, gano'n. Dito AJ, baka naman bibigyan mo kami ng budget. Di gawa na tayo ng foundry.
Total siya
Mag-ano
yung
na siguro ng
nagsabi.
ano. Oo, di ba? Magsaka na siguro in the future. But for now, we have different priorities. So,
Alright.
we'll focus on
Alright.
things first.
Pero ano, I'm really a fan of how you've built a community and all of this are online. And nakakatuwa lang to see all of it parang categorized and curated. So I'm looking forward to seeing more. And segue naman tayo to a simpler question. What typefaces can you recommend for mompreneurs? Wow. Mompreneurs.
Mompreneurs!
Depende sa, ay,
Anong
depende
klaseng
sa business.
mompreneur ka ba? Yes.
Yeah,
So I guess that's a question that you have to answer first. Ano ba yung business mo? And then afterwards, din tayo hahanap ng typeface. So if your business is something that deals with more serious things, maybe you want a sans serif that is more of like a text sans serif, then I would recommend something by Hanken Design. Marami silang magagandang neutral text neutral, for the lack of a better word, na text
Okay.
typefaces. But if you want something that's more expressive and like flexible, ayan si Lorenzo Martinez, ang dami niya mga swishy-swashy na mga typefaces. If you
True.
want something that has very, very Filipino roots, yan, si John David Mazas, ang katerba yung typefaces na may ganong qualities. And I can list down everyone here and try and praise them and share their qualities. But it's important first to understand what you're trying to convey before we can even jump to selecting a
Uh,
typeface.
this might be a future client. Who knows? Baka kaya siya naghahanap ng typeface, baka future client. All right. So another question from Lorenzo naman, since you've mentioned Lorenzo. His question is, what glyph or glyphs are you fond of experimenting or tweaking a lot?
Oh, I love the letter A.
Oh,
Lowercase. Lowercase letter A, lowercase letter G. I really
ah,
enjoy
true.
working on the lowercase letter G, kahit nasakit ulo siya minsan. Um, what else? And the at symbol. Yan. Na-enjoy
Hmm?
ko gawin yung mga yan. Mm-mm.
The as in the
At.
circular one?
Yes. Mm-mm.
Oh, so how can you? I don't know. That might be something for next level typeface makers. No, I don't know. But that's a interesting, So another one. So from Nala naman. Um, why do you think typefaces like Papyrus, Comic Sans, and Jokerman are drawing flack? That's a good question. I think this is a good question. Is there any way to redeem these typefaces? Yeah.
I do think it's just because of exposure. Like, Comic Sans, ba't ba galit na galit tayo sa Comic Sans? Sino ba nagpauso ng hatred for Comic Sans? Di ko talaga
That's true.
maintindihan. I mean, there are other poorly constructed typefaces that don't get that much flack from the general public. It's just because wala, we see them all the
Yeah.
time. And a lot of times, they are used in cases that we don't feel like bagay sila. Kunyari, ginagamit si Comic Sans para sa corporate emails. Di syempre, medyo funny siya. Um, but yeah, the overexposure is what lends to them being ugly or
Mm,
hated. But on
that's true.
their own, I don't really find anything wrong with these typefaces, especially if you learn how to use them properly and with what with where they're supposed to be used. So yeah.
Correct. Correct. So if I may add to this story, no, I've seen someone use Comic Sans in a whole branding system. That's what they did was Comic Sans, and then the photos that they used were parang they have watermark in itself. So parang it
Mm.
was really made well, pero
Hmm.
parang it showed na ito yung concept kasi. So I guess it boils down with the concept.
Yeah.
And so yun, parang it shows also your caliber as a designer if you could, you know, if you could use it well.
Yeah, I
Wow.
mean, if you're designing a children's party invite, why not use Comic Sans? I
Mm,
don't see.
that's true.
Di ba? Okay naman siya for that. Eh, hindi naman, bagay naman siya. So, kung gagamitin mo talaga siya sa situation na hindi siya bagay, edi obviously, it's never gonna work.
That's true.
So,
That's true. And
stan Comic
I
Sans.
think
Tama.
I stand comics. I've seen that. Yeah. So okay. So here's another. I think we're parang as we land. I have this one question for you. So I think medyo ano to. It's also a question that I have for myself. The Philippines is like a melting pot of different cultures, Spanish, Korean, Japanese, American, and with such vast resources of inspiration for both types and design. So sa tingin mo, what areas or sector or places or objects, medyo marami yun. Or objects pa ng Philippines yung parang untap pa as a source of reference for
Oh.
designs. Yeah, that's a
Ang dami. Sobrang dami. I think it's always gonna be untapped if you don't expand yung limits of what you think can we can take inspiration from. So for
yeah.
example, sorry kay John David, gagamitin na naman kitang example. Pero may
Dami
ginawang
niyang gawa eh.
um, type exercise si Jad na lang kasi. Si Jad, that's his nickname, na based on the ensaymada, which is like,
Oh.
who would have thought na may makakagawa ng typeface based on an ensaymada? And if you look at that typeface, it's very soft and fluffy, and it bends on into its own forms, which is very similar to how, you know, the ensaymada is. It's bread. So, I
Mm.
mean, if you're a designer and you think na okay, di ako makakakuha ever ng inspiration from food kasi food yan eh, paano ko siya gagawing design? Then, dun pa lang, untap na agad yung area na yon kasi you
Mm.
already limited yourself by saying that you can't use that as inspiration. But I feel like there is a wealth of things that you can try. I mean, yung joke nga lang na magsaksakan kayo is
No.
something that I was able to convert it. Not, hindi naman sa inaangat ko yung bangko ko or anything, but I mean, that was an opening for me to explore that type of design. And so I feel like it doesn't have to be super complicated. And you don't have to um, put boundaries uh, for yourself. And yun, try mo lang kahit ano, kahit sa
Mm.
sobrang pinaka weirdest thing that you can think of. Try and make a typeface out of that. Try and make a typeface out of a story that your mom told you when you're younger, or your favorite dish, or a street sign that is near your house, or your lola's old letters, yung handwriting niya, reference mo yun. So there's so many things na pwede mong pagkuhanan ng inspiration. Ikaw lang yung maglilimit sa sarili mo.
Correct, correct. Tapos parang siguro to add to that, parang it's amazing lang because kunyari, yung story naman ni Aaron, he created the typefaces that he saw before because no one was actually doing it. It was already there.
Yeah,
Um, present na siya. It's just that no one was making the fonts or the
exactly.
digital files of it. So he created it. That's why he parang he gave it away for free. So ikaw ba, do you
Yeah.
have something in your back parang back burner siya na parang shucks, I really wanted to do this concept pero I haven't had the time to do so. What's your
Uh,
untapped territory?
I really like fashion. Kaya ako
Mm,
ginawa si Terno.
nice.
Yun. So, yung ibang garments, sana. Pero ayan, wala nangyayari.
Oh.
One thing that I kind of wanted to start on was yung handwriting ni Jose Rizal. But then, si
Oh.
John Bisael nag-release ng typeface na
Mm.
handwriting ni Rizal. So, I was like, okay, sige, kanya na yan. But yeah, yun, ang daming iba pang pwede sana. But those are the things na first na nag-pop sa utak ko. But yeah, yun.
Correct. Right. See, I mean, even, so babalikan ko lang yung terno mo, no? Babalikan ko talaga siya. So, ang galing lang
I
na
know.
it is that small accent that you found inspiration because it just shows na parang even in the smallest detail, you can still expand it. So, I think that was very genius of you. So, we're waiting for it. Something like that. So, there. And then, so Joe, we could go on for hours, but we have this final question. Final question for you from Nina Unlay. So, genuinely curious, how specific of a skill set is designing type in the Philippines? Ganun to. So, is it fair
Oh.
to assume that most of them are still Manila-based? Mhm. Wondering how much more diverse this collection will get in the future. Ah, that's a good question.
Actually, hmm, based on submission, if we're talking about typefaces, I would say mas marami talagang Manila-based.
Yeah.
Um, Typefaces yon. Pero sobrang daming letterers from Cebu,
Oh.
from um, yeah, from other parts of the country, from Bacolod. May mga nakukuha rin akong submissions from those parts. When it comes, and yun nga, I think mas marami, ang funny to say na mas marami from Manilang type designers, pero actually, iilan lang naman kami talaga.
Oh, okay.
But the others are from, si Jad, taga Iloilo yan. Sina Diana from Cebu. Who else? Sorry,
Tribox.
may, hmm?
Tribox from Cebu.
Tribox from Cebu. Yeah, actually, Trybox, daming releases nila lately. Yeah, they're from
True.
Cebu. So I think konti lang talaga kasi pa from the Philippines. So if you compare the locations kung saan sila nanggagaling, masasabi mo na there's more from Manila, but like by like two people lang siguro.
Mm.
So yun. So I think maliit lang talaga yung space, yung sphere pa ng type designers, na strictly type designers. Um, yun. Mm-mm.
So
Sana nasagot ko. Sorry, medyo sabog yun.
no, you actually said it wonderfully. Pero yung ano, parang so we could safely say na yung skill set is really parang medyo specific pa and niche pa siya at this point, no? Parang it's still
Yes.
growing,
It's
kumbaga.
still growing. It definitely is still growing. Wala pa masyado nag-explore. I feel like it's such a complicated process to undertake kasi. Kaya it intimidates a lot of other designers to try. And so, konti lang talaga yung nagpa-pursue sa kanya. So, ayun.
Mm.
I'd really like to encourage everyone to at least try and create one typeface. Lalo na sa mga graphic designers na mahilig mag-type. Try nyo lang. Baka naman pala ma-enjoy nyo siya.
Oo nga. Correct, correct. Oo nga naman for graphic designers. Correct. But sorry, trying to myself. So there. So thank you so much, Joe, for answering all of these wonderful questions. So
Tama,
we
Albert.
go back. That's all the time we have for now. So back to you, Kayla.
Then I saw you were holding a pencil the whole time, so I wonder if after this you're going to be making your own typeface na kaagad.
Go
Shucks, yes.
Dustin.
Na pressure. And ako nagutom ako, Joe, when you were talking about the typeface inspired by ensaymada na soft and fluffy. So before we conclude today's Usapang Design with our guest speaker, Joe, would you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, I think yun na, and yung last kong sinabi na you really just have to try it first, and I would really encourage everyone to at least try and create one typeface, whether or not you publish it, para lang makita nyo if this is something that you can try and this is a field that you can try and explore. So yun. Good luck, guys. And hindi lang ako yung authority on type. Nakita niyo naman sa ating comment section, sobrang dami dyan na sumasagot ng questions. And they are all equally great type designers. So reach out to any one of them if you have questions or if you just want to chat.
Thank you again, Joe. Thank you very much, Dustin. It's nice to know that the community is so open and you really want to push this not only for professionals, but people who might be able to creatively explore themselves, their identity, their culture as Filipinos, and more through exploring typeface. So thank you very much. That concludes the session's Q&A portion. Thank you for tuning in to the third episode of Usapang Design. For updates, follow Adobo Magazine and the Communication Design Association of the Philippines on social media. It's the sixth episode, I'm sorry. And with that, thank you very much and have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you so much.